can you explain your condition?
Okay, so I have something wrong with my genes. I have like one of them missing, essentially. It's something that I was born with, but I didn't know that until this year when I got some genetic testing, and the results showed a problem with my genes, and that particular gene that's missing basically is programmed to kill the cells in my inner ear, and those are little tiny cells, and they pick up the sound that you hear around you and they take it to your brain. So mine are programmed to die, and a lot of them have died, which means that I have hearing loss.
How much can you hear at the moment?
So I have, luckily, well, I say luckily, the whole thing is quite unlucky for me, but luckily I do still have quite a lot of my low frequencies. So anything that's like a low sound and that you hear, I have quite good, within a good range of hearing. So obviously I play bass and I can still hear my bass very well. And then sort of it just kind of drops. It drops off in the middle frequencies, it drops down. And then the high frequencies, it pretty much drops off the scale. So it's called ski slope hearing loss. And anything that's like a really high pitched sound, like the top of the piano, I can't hear anymore. I can only hear, if you press the key, I can hear like the thud of the key, but I can't hear the actual note. I can't hear things like crickets, birds, basically anything that's really high pitch. And then everything that's like a middle frequency is largely speech. So like all your consonants when you talk, P's, T's, S's, I can't hear them. So I find speech really, really difficult, and I have to lip read. Otherwise I don't know what the person is saying. If I'm looking away from you, I can hear a noise, like a mumble, but I don't know what's being said. I wear hearing aids, and they help with some things. So they'll like lift the stuff that I can't hear, but it's not like a fix, and it's not like a normal sound. So it's still very difficult to listen in certain situations, even with my hearing loss. Even with the hearing aids, sorry. But I'd say I've probably got about 30% of my hearing. Maybe less. I don't actually know anymore from the last test that I've had. But yeah, probably in most situations, like, 60-70% of the time, I don't know what's going on sometimes when people are talking. I have no idea what's going on. So
this was hereditary. Did you know this was coming then?
No, I didn't, because, well, I had an inkling because, so my grandma was deaf, and then my brother, when he was about 11 years old, my mum and dad were saying to him, get the phone's ringing, get the phone, and he was saying, the phone's not ringing. So my mum took him for a hearing test, and it was discovered that he was losing his hearing. But I was quite young at the time, so I didn't really sort of have any thoughts about it. But obviously it could have been a thing like, is this maybe running the family? But my grandma assumed that she'd lost her hearing because she worked in sewing factories, and because the sound was loud, she thought that was what had affected it. But then when I was about 17, 18, I started being aware of, the first thing I actually noticed was when I was listening to songs, I kept getting the lyrics wrong. And there was some words that I was like, that's not a word. Like, I said to my friends, like, have you heard this new song? Like, it's got this word blad in it. Like, what does that mean? And they were like, that's not what they're saying. And I was like, oh gosh, but I kind of put it out of my head because I really, really, really didn't want to get it. I didn't want it to happen to me. But it has gotten worse over the years. And as my mum has gotten older, it's not like it will affect you at this age. It can affect different people at different times. But it's like a super, super rare condition. There's only like a few families that in the whole world that have been diagnosed with this particular hearing loss. And my mum's started to struggle with her hearing as she's gotten older. So I decided to do something about it and find out why have we all got this problem, and what is wrong with me and what will happen. So I had some genetic testing done, and they told me it's a dominant gene. So if ever in the future I have children, it's 50-50 whether they get it. And they told me that unfortunately, from their studies so far, it will take all of my hearing eventually. There's a chance that I might keep a bit of it, but they've told me that, like, prepare yourself because you'll probably lose it all. So.
How can you prepare for something like that?
No, I mean, like, it's something that it's very, very difficult for me because I was born with my hearing and I was born a fully able-bodied person in terms of hearing. And I sort of, you know, found out sort of who I was and what kind of person I was and what I liked and stuff based on having my hearing. And then as I've gradually lost it, it's massively, massively affected my life. It's affected every aspect of my life, massively including my job because I am a musician. So that has caused me great difficulties. And I denied it for a long time, and I didn't tell people about it. I would meet someone and be talking to them and have no idea what they're saying, but go, oh yes, smile, nod, and just wait for their reaction. And if they do a frown, then I'd do a frown and go, oh goodness me. Or if they laughed, then I'd laugh. And you know, and I would rather do that than sort of say, by the way, I have hearing loss and I can't hear you properly, because I was really kind of ashamed of it and I just didn't want it to be happening. So I just tried to ignore it and pretend that it wasn't happening. But as the years have passed by, it has got a lot worse, and so I have to sort of try and be more prepared. I have to do things now in my everyday life in order to function. I have to do things like when we gig, I have some like in-ear monitors and I have them EQ'd to boost the frequencies that I can't hear, and that's been really helpful for me. And also I've decided to learn sign language with my partner, so that if in the future, you know, he can translate for me, he can, you know, and if in the future I do decide to have children, then and they have it, I'll be more prepared, to be way more prepared than my parents were. So I'm trying to be prepared, but I'm not prepared because, yeah, I mean, how do you kind of prepare for that? It's like, yeah, it's like a loss that's just like happening all the time, you know. So yeah, it's difficult.
You are still a very young woman. You're only 33 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you said you tried to ignore that it was happening, out of sight, out of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have mentioned as well that you are a musician, and you confided in me to ask whether you think it was a good idea to talk about. I asked you, do you think now's the right time to talk about it? And you said yes. Why do you think now is the right time, Terri?
I think that I have to accept the fact that this is real and it's happening, and it's got to the point now where my hearing is so bad that I can't not talk about it, because I can't put myself in situations in the studio, in interviews with yourself, and not tell people about it, because I've run into so many situations where I haven't told people, look, I need to see your mouth, I need to, you know, have this problem, and I don't know what's going on, and then I just look like I'm either really stupid or I'm really rude, or like I'm a bit you know, I'm kind of on some other planet in my head. I think that, yeah, it's kind of got to the point where it's unavoidable. I have to start talking about it, and I kind of say a lot, like I'm like Googling, like, you know, musicians with hearing loss, like singers with hearing loss, bass players with hearing loss, just to try and find someone to kind of like relate to. Like, I'd love to sit down and have a conversation with, like, I know Katie Tunstall has struggled with hearing loss. I'd love to just sit down and have a conversation with her about it. Dave Grohl as well, I know that he's lost a lot of his hearing, and yeah, I think there's probably never maybe a good time, but it's needed. It's needed, and I also need to come to terms with it and need to accept it and own it a little bit more to make my life easier by people being aware of it.
Just to be completely transparent as well, we're sat opposite each other making complete eye contact. Our microphones are pulled down so you're able to see my mouth as I'm speaking to you, because sometimes you can't hear me when I'm speaking.
Yeah.
I've got to ask you this as well, Terri-Ann. You have mentioned you are a musician.
Mm-hmm.
People will think, and quite rightly I think, how can someone be a musician and essentially be deaf?
Yeah, and that is something that I am afraid of. I'm afraid of people finding out, because I do think that they will go, well, she can't do that because she can't hear properly. So how can she can't do that? Like, we can't take her seriously. Or they might think, oh, well, she's all right because she's deaf. But I think people do need to know that hearing loss affects everybody differently, and a lot of people might be severely deaf, but they can still hear certain things. And for me personally, because I have such good low frequencies, I can still hear a lot of what is happening. So like my bass, I can hear the drums, the kick and the snare. Like, I'm good with them. I can hear them, and they're what ground me when I'm playing. Like, obviously, like our drummer John, his kick is, I can hear that, and so that's I can lock in. Even if I can't hear the hi-hats, I can lock in because he's there, he's keeping me grounded with his kick. Some stuff like on electric guitar, like if it's played lower, I can hear a bit of it. If it's played higher, I either can't hear it at all, or I can't make out what the melody is. Obviously I'm a singer as well, and there are some things now when some notes that I'm singing that I can no longer hear. So it is difficult because sometimes I'm sort of flying blind, but I've learned to adapt as the years have gone by. A lot of it is just like memory, and it's hard to describe, but I I hear it in my head. So if I'm listening to a Mariah Carey song, there's some like points of her, like her whistle tone and stuff, I can't hear it anymore. I just can't hear anything anymore. But I remember what she's doing because I remember listening to the song when I was younger, and I remember what it sounds like. So when that bit comes up, it's like I can still hear it, but I'm just imagining it. And I do use that a lot when we're in the studio. So if there's like a synth bit that's being played that's too high and I can't hear it, I'll get Harry to play on an octave lower so I can hear it. And then when it's being played high, I remember what the melody is, so I sort of just imagine it. So there's various different techniques and things that I've learned to adapt to help me. But as I say, for now, luckily I do still have a lot of my low tones, so I can function. Music makes more sense to me than conversation does. I'd rather just get up on the stage and play a set than sit down and have a conversation, because I don't know what's coming and I might not understand. Whereas when I'm on stage, I'm there, I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm playing, I remember everything, and I feel much more confident, to be honest. And that's why it kind of means all the more to me, because it makes more sense. Despite the fact that I've got hearing loss, and some people might say it makes no sense, but it makes sense to me.
You mentioned musicians being on stage, such as Katie Tunstall and the Foo Fighters' Dave Grohl. And we also know that Rose Ayling-Ellis, who's an actor and also on Strictly Come Dancing, was deaf. How much of an influence is it seeing somebody like that in the public eye owning it?
I think it's very, very encouraging. And I recently watched the documentary that Rose did about deaf awareness and the importance of subtitles and the importance of signing. And it's a great documentary. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. I think it's... Obviously, there are a lot of people with hearing loss, but there are more people who can hear. Like, we're kind of a minority. And I think that probably it has influenced me into coming here today and speaking to you about this. Because I see them, wearing the hair up and having the hearing aids and being confident and doing what they're doing. And that they're not saying, oh, I can't, people might think I can't do this or I can't do this, because they're not saying that. They're just doing stuff. They're just doing whatever they're doing and they're getting on with it. And I feel like, it has massively affected me, actually, because I want to be like that. I want to be brave, and I want to be like, well, this is who I am. And if there's any other singers or musicians out there who have hearing loss or who are facing anything like I am, like, I would love to see somebody who is going through this, because I'd be like, they get it, they know, and they know how hard it is, and they know how sort of sad it is, and maybe I can't find that person. But someone might be listening to this and think, oh, well, great, I found somebody. So, yeah.
Terri-Ann, it is out there in the open now.
You've
been very brave sharing with me your story that I know that you're just coming to terms with, and just telling your nearest and dearest. Mm-hmm. What would you say to people now? What do they need to know? What do they need to understand going forward?
I think in terms of, if you speak to anyone with hearing loss, obviously everyone's different and everyone has different needs, but it's not a case of shouting or like raising your voice. That doesn't help. Just facing someone when you're speaking to them opening your mouth, clearly, if they're lip reading, which I do lip read. And I guess like talking about it and making it okay, making it not like a thing that's a big secret. And in terms of our music, I wouldn't really want it to change people's perception of Nalgo Bay or of our songs. But then at the same time, I do think the people who are listening to our music, they will hear what I've written and played like better than I ever will, which is quite sad, but at the same time, maybe it makes a difference when they're listening. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think maybe just to talk about it and just to make it, if everyone else is okay with it, then maybe I could be more okay with it. You know?
Are you okay now?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, you've been a good person to have a first official conversation with about this, because I was very nervous about telling you and about talking about it, and you've made me feel like actually, yeah, it's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah.